Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. What is up, podcast listeners? I am so excited to be here with you for another episode of the podcast and giving you a little peek behind the curtain today, because the way that this podcast episode came about was literally this morning. I was in a coaching session with a dad and we bumped up against this topic, and I was like, I really want to record a podcast about this. So here we are just a few hours later, and I'm putting on the headphones, turning on the microphone, and recording this podcast for you. So sometimes it works out that way. And I love when that happens because it feels like it's a real intuitive nudge from the universe that, like, this is something that's worth talking about and that will be really helpful for people to hear and be a little opportunity for me to share some of my support and wisdom, hopefully, with you. And what we're talking about today is believing in our kids. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey that's going to maybe not seem so obvious right at first, but hopefully will result in you having a little bit of an aha moment towards the end when you see the connection between the way we discipline in our kids and how that connects to how much we believe in our kids, how much we believe in ourselves. And this concept, how many of you have said this before in your life, either in your head or out loud? This kid is old enough to know better. We're going to connect the dots between all of those things today. I know I have said that. You're old enough to know better, or this kid is old enough to know better, or, you know, I might be talking about a specific parenting struggle that I'm having with my kids. You know, they're throwing things or they're using, disrespectful language or whatever. And the person I'm talking to will be like, how old is that kid? And I'll say, old enough to know better, old enough to know not to do that, right? I'm going to hopefully help you connect the dots between that mindset, belief in our children, and the way that we actually discipline and show up in our relationship with them and respond to their behavior. So I always start each episode with a confession, and my confession for you today is something that's kind of embarrassing a little bit, but I'm also a little bit weirdly proud of it. So we'll see what you think. My confession is that my oldest son, when he was, going through his early first couple of years of school, was very delayed in reading. That is not my confession because there's nothing, salacious to confess about the fact that a kid is delayed in reading. That just happens sometimes. My confession is that I had no clue. I literally had no idea that he was delayed in reading. I figured it out after the fact, but thanks to some seasoned and stealthy teachers that he had in kindergarten and first and second grade, and my sort of blind naivete as a first-time mom, I literally had no clue. I knew he was having small group reading during reading time and that, the teachers were working with him, but I don't know how I managed to, speaking of connect the dots, not connect the dots, that meant that he was having some trouble in school. And I totally knew that, when he had homework, he couldn't do it by himself. Like, I had to read the homework to him. But I really never spent any time comparing him to other kids. He was my first kid, so I had no previous experience to compare it to. So I just figured, he just hasn't learned to read yet. Now, 4 kids later, and however many years, let's see if I tried to do that math, I'd say maybe 13 years later, I can look back on that and say, oh, wow, yeah, he was really behind the milestones that the Denver public school system sets for their students and what we typically see in reading acquisition and all that stuff. But at the time, I had no idea. And maybe that makes me seem like a really oblivious parent or just too, blind faith or whatever. But that was my confession for you. That's how I was. And the reason why I wanted to use that confession to talk about this concept of belief in our kids is because of the conversation I had this morning with my client. So my client has a 4.5-year-old, and he is a divorced dad. And This topic comes up all the time when I'm working with my divorced clients or separated clients. The idea that their kiddo is picking up stuff that's not great from the other parent when they're at the other parent's house. And that was the topic we were talking about this morning. Super common, super normal to feel that way. Super common, by the way, I'm not trying to gaslight you, super common for that to actually be happening, not just that it might be in your head or something. Like that really probably is happening because no matter what, whenever our kids are with whatever parent they're with, they're getting great stuff and they're getting not so great stuff. So when you see that not so great stuff, that's real. It really is happening. The conversation that I had with my client this morning was about, okay, well, what do I do about that? And his idea was to sit down and talk to his son about how this stuff, that the way that he's showing up in the world is really not great. And he understands that he learned it from his mom, but we're not going to do that. And here's why it's not okay. And here's why I don't want you to show up that way when you're with me, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I really want to have this, like, impactful conversation with my son. And, this guy's been working with me for a long time. So this is not the first time he's heard me say, and if you're a client of mine, you might be actually like talking out loud to your AirPods right now. Talking doesn't teach. Your kiddo can totally learn that showing up in a relationship this way that he maybe learned at mommy's house isn't helpful, but he's not going to learn that from you telling him that. He's not going to learn anything from you telling it to him. Talking is just not the way that kids learn, for the most part. I'd say 99% of the time. Or another way to think about this is we retain 80% of what we experience, but only 20% of what we hear. So when we're trying to teach our kids through talking, that's a lot of gum flapping to hopefully get through to these kids and get the message across. And this is why so many people come to me and frustrated because they've said something a million times and their kiddo still hasn't gotten the memo, et cetera, et cetera. So my clients learn from me really quickly. Talking doesn't teach. Kids learn best through experiences and modeling. And our kids demonstrate to us that that's true so many times and in so many ways. Most of my clients don't have a very hard time like understanding that idea that talking doesn't teach, that experiential learning and modeling are way more profound for them. That's why we use natural consequences. That's why we stay calm and we keep talking to a minimum when we discipline our kids. That's why we do our best to take care of ourselves. And one of the single best gifts we can give our kids is a healed parent, because then that modeling is coming across just all the time. You know, Teaching this concept to my adult clients is not a problem. We all get it. And then what do? We can't turn off the talking. So the conversation that I had with this dad today was about that. When I pointed out to him, like, okay, I hear what you're saying. This kiddo's behaving this way when he comes to your house. You're fairly convinced that he's learning that behavior from what's happening at mom's house, and you want to have a conversation with him about that so that hopefully he can learn not to do that. And I know you remember from all the work we've done so far that talking doesn't teach. So what do you think about that? And he's kind of like, oh, yeah, I remember that now. Dang it. Why was I thinking about having this conversation? And that is a really good question. When we know better, but we're not doing better, why does that happen? And this is where the belief in our kids comes in. If you are able, so what I'm asking you to do as my client, as my listener, and my audience, whatever, is to have a pretty big paradigm shift, moving away from verbal discipline and into using modeling and experiences to teach your child. What I'm asking you to do in a really weird way is a complete and utter trust fall into your child. I want you to surrender into the belief that your kiddo has got this, that when they are ready to learn these lessons, they will learn them. And that if they haven't learned them yet, it's not for lack of effort or lack of skill on your part. It's not for lack of ability or lack of intelligence on their part. Those pieces haven't come together yet, but that's okay. When you find yourself stuck in the talking, not able to turn off the talking. And you get to that place of like, why? I know Anne has taught me so many times talking doesn't teach. I've taught myself so many times that talking doesn't teach because when I use experiences and modeling, when I give natural consequences and I stay calm, my kid's behavior improves so much better. I've proven it to myself. Why? Why, even after all of that, am I still talking to my kid? The sneaky answer might be because you're having a hard time believing in your kiddo. Ouch. What? I don't wanna think that I don't believe in my kid. I want my kid to know so much that I believe in them. But let's think about this. Like, if we really believed in our kiddo, like, if I really believed in my kid, would I keep, like, verbally bludgeoning him with the same message over and over and over again? Or would I set this container up with this lesson being available? I'm presenting the lesson to my child and trusting that when my kid is ready, they will get the memo. They will learn the lesson and they have everything that they need. They came Earthside fully equipped to be able to absorb and integrate new information when they're ready, when their brain has gotten there, when they've resolved whatever's blocking them, all of that good stuff, they will figure it out. Parenting from this way of just teaching through experiences and modeling, using our own emotional regulation to stay neutral, setting firm and healthy boundaries and enforcing them with loving consequences. Like, this is a whole new way of being for a lot of us. And it really does rest on the back of believing in our kids. I believe in you. I believe that you have what it takes to learn this lesson. And so I don't need to repeat myself a million times, hit you over the head with it, be like so on the nose. It's not my job to connect the dots for you. I trust that you can connect those dots and that you will connect them eventually. So see where this is coming around with this idea about, my oldest son being delayed in reading. Like, he well, by the way, in 3rd grade, something just clicked for him, and he went from being, like, the slowest and most delayed reader in his classroom to the biggest bookworm you've ever seen in your life, and to this day, he is the most avid reader of all of my children. He's the most studious and academic of all my children. He truly is a scholar. Now, what would have happened if I had known if I hadn't been so oblivious and I had known that he was delayed in reading, I probably would have spent kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade fretting about it. I probably would have spent a lot of time hammering home to him, like, let's read some more. Let's work on your ABCs, blah, 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 blah. I didn't do any of that stuff because I had blind faith that my kid was going to figure out how to read eventually. And I had total oblivion that he was behind the curve. So I wasn't like waiting for it or looking for it or hyper vigilant about it or perseverating on it at all. And he did. He figured it out when he was ready. Take this back to what this dad is talking about with his son learning some not so great stuff at his mom's house. Well, this kid is 4 years old. It's going to take him a while to get to the point where he is individuated enough and has the objectivity to be able to look at, this is how things go between me and my mom. And I actually not so sure I think that's such a great thing. And these are the way things go in that area between me and my dad. And that seems a little bit better for me. What a great realization that a 4-year-old is way too young to have, by the way. And what happens if you, instead of trying to be verbally disciplining your kid or verbally teaching your kid, hey, we don't show up in relationships this way. We should do it this other way. What you learned at your mom's house is not okay, blah, 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 blah. What if instead we show up with integrity in our relationship and trust that over time, this kiddo who has been now given this amazing experience of seeing multiple different ways that relationships can go down and really healthy boundaries and a healthy relationship with his dad, trust that He's not a dummy. He's going to figure it out. He will eventually. And in the meantime, he's gotten to have this really healthy, connected, positive relationship with his dad, which was really all that he needed to learn the lesson. So you see how belief in our kids' ability to grow and put it together and land on their feet in their own way that isn't necessarily how we wanted it to go or how we envisioned it or what we would have done if it had been us is so powerful. And it all starts from that trust fall. Like, I trust you. I trust you to figure this out. I trust you. I trust the universe that you have what it takes and you have all the raw ingredients, and that eventually you're going to figure out how to bake the cake of your life and have it turn out delicious. I trust you. I believe in you. It is huge. Just feel in your body how it feels to say, like, I believe in my kid. I trust he's going to get this. I trust my kid's going to figure this out. I don't know about you, but for me, there's a huge feeling of relief, relaxation. It feels like a load has been taken off my shoulders. I don't have to connect the dots for my kid. They're going to get it. I don't have to do all the heavy lifting. They came earthside ready to lift on their own. And because of that relief and relaxation, I can actually show up in my relationship way more attuned, way more present, way more connected, which ironically then allows me to give my kid exactly what they need to be able to connect the dots and learn this lesson when they're ready. And you know, what's the craziest thing? I told this whole story to my client. I even shared the story about my son with the reading, and he's like, you know, what's crazy is we weren't talking about this at all, but I have been completely hammering on my kid about the ABCs and thinking, what the heck is going on here? Why is my kid not learning the ABCs? This is a smart kid. Am I doing a bad job of teaching? Is there something wrong with him cognitively that he can't learn it? And I was like, dude, what if you just trusted that this kid's definitely going to graduate high school knowing the ABCs? It's going to happen. One of these days, your kid's going to learn the alphabet. It is going to happen. So instead of trying to control that one aspect and make it happen sooner than it can, what if you just allow yourself to kind of surrender into that trust fall? Or I gave him also the analogy of, trying to teach a kid to tie their shoes or whatever. You know, if you try to teach an 18-month-old to tie their shoes, you could be the most amazing teacher on the planet. Your kid could be the smartest child that's ever been born with an IQ that like can't even be measured. That 18-month-old still ain't going to learn to tie their shoes. Now you can spend the next like whatever 5 years fretting about like, when is this kid going to learn? When is this kid going to learn to tie their shoes? What's the matter with my kid? What's the matter with me? There's something wrong here. Or you can just trust, like, someday my kid's going to learn to tie their shoes. It's not time yet. It's not time yet. So that brings me to that super, super common expression that we all say as parents: you're old enough to know better. This kid is old enough to know better. Why is my kid doing this? He's old enough to know better. How often do we say those things? My answer to that, including to myself when I say that, is, well, clearly not. If your child were old enough to know better, they would know better. What if they're just not ready yet? And it's our job to continuously create that container, make that lesson available to them, remove any obstacles that we have power over that impede them from learning that lesson, and trust that when they are able to learn the lesson, when the timing is right, when all the pieces of that puzzle fall into place, they're gonna learn it. I hope that that feels like 8 gajillion times more comfortable to you, more relaxing to you, more positive, more optimistic, more comfortable. And guess what? Sometimes we're wrong, right? Sometimes our kid gets to 3rd grade and they still don't know how to read. Sometimes our kid shows that they have whatever motor skill challenges and they need occupational therapy. All of that stuff doesn't matter. Everything I just said holds true. The trust fall is what your kid needs from you. The trust and belief in them is what they need, even if at some point they need extra help to get where they're going. because no matter what, whether it's a kiddo who does need OT eventually or a kiddo who's going to figure it out for themselves and they won't need any help or intervention, either way, both of those kids need 10 times more than the help and the intervention, belief from a parent. So I hope that lands with you. I hope you're feeling like, whoa, okay. And now I can see the connection between believing in my kid and being able to discipline my child effectively. I can see the connection between believing in my kid and that switch away from verbal discipline. I can see the connection between believing in my kid and when that belief is not strong, that makes perfect sense that I end up having the verbal diarrhea, not being able to turn off the talking. I hope that connection seems really clear to you and really helpful for you. And how do I end my episodes with you? With a question from a listener. Now, this listener asked to remain anonymous. So if you're out there thinking, I have so many questions for Anne, but I don't want her to say my name, that's fine. Send me your question anyway, and and tell me you want to be anonymous. I have no problem saying anonymous mom says, or anonymous parent says, just like I'm about to say right now. So if you have a question and you want me to address it, could be super simple, like how do I get my kid to sleep through the night? Could be super complex, like what do I do? My kid's thinking about having sex. All of the stuff, every single parenting problem out there, I want to answer your question. All you need to do is go to my website and send me your question. So if you go to my website, there's a contact form, send it on in to me. And anonymous listener, I should say, says, having real struggles here. My daughter will be 3 in July. We started potty training with her over a month ago. I would say she's 98% potty trained with the pee stuff, but only has pooped on the toilet like 3 times and only by accident. But she really keeps pooping in her underwear every day. So I'm going to tell you 2 things here. I'm going to tell you my like one panty a day potty training technique. And then I'm going to kind of tell you the mindset work that goes along with it. And that if you are working with me, you already know that's like kind of the jam that you experience with every parenting dilemma with me is we've got those 2 parallel tracks. The what do you do boots on the ground? Here's your to-do list. And the what do I need to do on the inside so that I actually do the stuff on the to-do list. And so we're going to talk about both of those things today. So I will tell you my one panty a day policy, which is this. If your kiddo is showing signs that they're ready to potty train, I want you to give them a big present, which is a package of panties and have all the things on them that are cool. And because I call underwear panties, I've called underwear panties with all of my children, including all 3 of my sons. Panties are panties. That's just, I can't say other words. So I'm going to keep saying panties. And if that feels weird to you, then my apologies. But so you want to start every single day with 1 pair of panties, and you're just going to say, this is great. You get to start your day with panties because you're such a big kiddo. I'm so excited for you. Let's see how long you go before you might need to go back to diapers for the day. No problem. And I really want it to be in your mind that it's no problem. So this is where that whole, like, they're gonna figure this out. It's gonna happen. So let's just have that trust fall. I believe in my child. I believe that my child is able to learn how to use the potty, and give them their panties. And the second they have an accident, which is no problem, you just say, oh, looks like you need to wear a diaper for the rest of the day. That's no worries. And you really need to not care. Okay. You need to give 0, you know what's about whether or not your kid goes 5 minutes or 5 hours or the whole day without needing a diaper. But they only go through 1 pair of panties a day. Okay. And they switch to diapers. Now, this is also the trust fall piece because we don't know if this kiddo is ready yet. And it's not a problem if they're not. We're going to stick with the 1 panty a day policy. And it could take 3 months or a whole year or something for this kiddo to learn not to have an accident that requires them to go back into their diaper. I will say that in my experience, that is very rare. If your child is truly ready to potty train, this approach works practically 100% of the time. Now, Every kid's different. Some kids, it takes them 1 day. Sometimes it takes them 2 weeks, whatever. But you see where I'm going with this. And the most important point is it doesn't matter. Your kid will figure it out when they are ready. And when they're not ready, well, there's no point in being upset about it. The thing that your kid needs most from you is calm and confidence. I am so calm. I don't care at all. It's totally your choice if you make a mistake in your pants or not. And I will love you no matter what you decide. Here I am. I am a neutral thing that loves you unconditionally. And also, I believe in you. Like, you've got this. You're going to figure it out eventually. And that's like the diabolical combination of energies that is like mind blowing in families. When you can truly have like, this is your journey. I'm not upset. You get to decide. I'll love you no matter what you pick. Plus, I believe in you. You're definitely going to figure this out. You're a rock star. Holy cow. Like, can you imagine if we had grown up in that energy? If that were the soup we were cooked in, we all might be like, I don't know, Buddha right now or something. We be like the most highest versions of ourselves or whatever. So you have this opportunity to do that and give that to your kiddo from that, the trust fall plus the structure of the one panty a day idea. So I hope that's helpful for you. I hope that demonstrates like a real boots on the ground application of this idea of the trust fall about the belief in your kiddo. And I cannot wait to talk to you again next week. Remember to get your questions into me. Go ahead and like and review and subscribe to the podcast, and I will see you all soon. Bye. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.